Okay, guys, Timmy coming at you here, and I'm going to go over some of the parts of the heart, looking at the circulatory dude, and go over some of the major arteries in this video. So, here we go. All right, so you got the heart here. So, here we have the left atrium. The valve that separates the left atria from the left ventricle, that's the mitral valve, or bicuspid valve, or left AV valve. And then you have the largest chamber of the heart, the thickest muscular wall, the left ventricle. And then you have the aortic valve. Then on the right side of the heart, you have the right atrium. And the valve that separates the right atrium from the right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. And then you have the right ventricle. And then the right ventricle pumps deoxygenated blood through this valve here. And this valve is the pulmonic valve, or pulmonary valve. And remember that the right and left ventricle pump the same amount of blood, but they do so under very different pressures. So when the left ventricle contracts, it forces open the aortic valve, and it sends oxygenated blood through the ascending aorta. And then the ascending aorta forms an arch right here called obviously, the aortic arch. And there are three big arteries that come off the aortic arch. So going from right to left in the body, you have this big artery called the brachiocephalic artery. And the brachiocephalic artery, or brachiocephalic trunk, that branches off to an artery that supplies your gourd, your brain, called the right common carotid artery. And then the right common carotid, or the brachiocephalic trunk, then branches off to an artery that supplies your arm, and that is called, or right subclavian artery. Subclavian, clavicle, collarbone. So let me get rid of some of this. And the right subclavian then branches off into the right axillary artery. And then the right axillary artery then branches into this big artery in your arm called, that's why I had to learn those body parts, the right brachial artery. Let me get rid of this. So we move farther down the arm. Yeah. Oops. Right brachial artery. Then the right brachial artery branches off into the right radial artery and the right ulnar artery. And it forms an arch called the accurate artery. and then you have little divisions that supply the hand. Now, we move back up. You have the, excuse me, ascending aorta, arch of the aorta, and then back of the heart, not seen, you have the descending aorta. And there are basically two divisions of the descending aorta. You have the, not shown here, so I'm kind of drawing it in. You have the thoracic aorta, and then you have the abdominal aorta. So from the thoracic and abdominal aorta, there are tons of arteries that branch off of them. Again, this is general, and I want the major arteries. So let's look. You have this part right here of the aorta is called the celiac trunk. And then this organ right here is the liver. So this big artery that branches off the celiac trunk is the hepatic artery. And then another artery that branches off is the splenic artery. Provides oxygenated blood to the spleen. The spleen is involved in getting rid of old red blood cells that have died or are about to die, and it's also involved in your lymphatic system, so your immune system. So you can live without a spleen because we've got a pretty heavy-duty immune system, and it's redundant. Then you move down, and you have these arteries that supply your kidneys. So you have the right and left renal arteries. And moving down a little farther. Here, you see that the abdominal aorta then branches off. Little y here. This is called the common iliac artery, right and left. And then you have the internal iliac, and then the external iliac. So this is the internal. And this, of course, is the X, both right and left. Now we're going to move a little farther down. And the external iliac then branches off into the femoral artery. Femoral femur. And then as you move down the leg, and again, these are bilateral, so you got a left and right femoral artery. You have the artery that supplies or is in back of your knee, called the Popliteal Artery, or Popliteal Artery. And you have the posterior tibialis and the anterior tibialis arteries. And farther down the leg. Oops. You have the dorsalis pedis, so you take a pedal pulse. Then you have the accurate artery of the foot. So those are the big arteries. Some of them anyway. It's real quick. You up here, you have the left common carotid artery. And the left common carotid artery then branches into the left external and left internal carotid arteries. So I hope that helped, and I'll make another video on the veins.